Anna Mihailovna Kosatkina recognized it immediately. In the first second, when the woman handed the coat over the cloakroom counter, not the woman's face, not her voice, not the silhouette in the theater doorway. The coat was wool, dark blue, with a wide collar and 2 rows of large mother-of-pearl buttons. Anna Mihailovna took it mechanically, out of habit. She had been working as a cloakroom attendant for 1.5 years. Since the autumn of '45, when she had returned from the evacuation, her hands knew what to do on their own. Receive the coat, check the pockets, hang it on the hanger, give the tag. But this time her hands froze. The collar was wide, warm, turned down. On the inner side, where the fabric touched the neck, there was a barely visible embroidery. 2 initials, sewn with a thin thread, whose color almost blended with that of the lining. A.K. Anna Kosatkina, her own initials, her own embroidery. She herself had embroidered them 10 years ago, on a winter evening, sitting by the window. She remembered every stitch. She remembered choosing the color of the thread. A little darker than the lining, so it wouldn't stand out, but so she herself would know. She remembered how her fingers tired from the meticulous work, how she squinted, looking closely at the tiny letters. She had bought this coat from Gum in the year '37. Expensive, high quality, imported. Back then, you could still find such things. She had spent half her monthly salary on it, wore it with care, kept it, then gave it to her daughter. Zoia was taller, slimmer, and the coat fit her perfectly. She remembered how her daughter twirled in front of the mirror, smiled, and said, "Thank you, Mother. It's so beautiful." It was Zoya's coat. Anna Mihailovna stood motionless, holding the coat in her hands. Her heart was beating somewhere in her throat, fast, muffled. A cold shiver ran up her spine. Goosebumps appeared on her arms. Her thoughts were tangled, scattered, not connecting into a whole. The coat was heavy, dense, real. She felt its weight in her hands, smelled its scent, a strange perfume, cigarette smoke, something incomprehensible. But underneath it all was that familiar smell of wool, which she remembered. The woman who had handed over the coat was waiting for the tag. Her voice was calm, quiet, a little tired. She asked her to hurry. The show was already starting. Anna Mihailovna silently hung the coat on the hanger. Her hands were shaking. She took out the metal tag with the number 123 and handed it to the woman. The woman took it, nodded, turned, and headed towards the auditorium. Her heels clicked on the marble floor of the foyer, slow, rhythmic, moving away. The sound echoed in the empty cloakroom. Anna Mihailovna watched her go. The woman was tall, thin, about 30 to 35 years old. Dark hair pulled back in a low bun, a simple gray dress, no jewelry. An ordinary woman, one of the hundreds who came to the theater every evening. Nothing special. She walked quickly, without looking back, and disappeared behind the doors of the auditorium, except for the coat. Anna Mihailovna turned back to the rack, her eyes searching for number 123. The coat hung among tens of others. Black, brown, gray, worn, shabby, post-war. But she only saw the dark blue one. The mother-of-pearl buttons shone faintly in the gloom of the cloakroom, catching the reflections of the lamp. She approached, reached out her hand, touched the collar. The fabric was soft, warm. She turned the collar over, looked at the embroidery once more. The letters were clear, neat. A.K., no mistake. It was her work. Her hands had embroidered these letters. Her hands were shaking. Anna Mihailovna clenched them into fists, hid them behind her back. It was hard to breathe. The air stopped somewhere halfway, not reaching her lungs. There was pressure in her chest. In her head, one single word was pounding. Zoia, Zoia, Zoia. Her daughter had disappeared in the winter of '42. January, blockade, famine, the most terrible time. Zoia worked at the Kirov factory, processing parts for shells. 12-hour shifts, a ration of 125 grams of bread, minus 30 degrees frost. The water froze in the pipes. Electricity was supplied 2 hours a day. People were dying by the hundreds in the workshops, on the streets, in apartments. They went to sleep and never woke up. They went out for water and fell next to the ice hole. They worked until their last breath, until their heads fell onto the lathe. Zoia left for her shift on January 9th. It was still dark in the morning. Anna Mihailovna walked her to the door. Zoya was pale, thin, weakened. A gray face, sunken eyes. But she walked. She always walked. She never complained. She told her mother that you must not stop, that if you stop, that's it. It's the end. Work was what gave her strength. Work gave her meaning. Work gave her hope that all this would end someday. Anna Mihailovna hugged her daughter goodbye. She strongly felt how weak Zoya had become. Just bones under the coat. She told her, "Be careful." Zoya nodded, smiled slightly, and left. She never came back. Anna Mihailovna waited until morning, sitting on the bed, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the door, listening to every sound on the stairs. Maybe it's her? Maybe she's just late? Maybe she stayed overnight at a friend's dormitory, but deep down she knew something was wrong. Zoya always came back, always, even when it was very hard. In the morning she left for the factory. She walked a long way, several kilometers on foot. Her legs were giving way, her head was spinning from hunger, but she walked. She reached the gate. She asked where Zoya Kasatkina was, a worker in workshop 3. The guard looked in the register, shook his head. She hadn't come for her shift. Anna Mihailovna went to the workshop, asked the foreman. He didn't know either. They said maybe she was taken to the hospital. Maybe she fell on the way. She scoured the hospitals. 3 hospitals. 2 reception rooms. Everywhere the same thing. Zoya Kasatkina was not among the patients. She scoured the morgues, saw rows of bodies covered with sheets, looked for her daughter among them. She was scared. But she looked. She didn't find her. She asked at the dormitory. Maybe someone had seen Zoya. Maybe she had stopped by someone's room. Her friends shook their heads. They hadn't seen her. They didn't know. One said she had last seen her at the shift on the evening of January 8th. Zoya was tired, complaining about the foreman, saying the quotas were impossible, that people were collapsing, and no one helped. She said it out loud, in the workshop. Several workers had heard. Anna Mihailovna remembered that Zoya had indeed complained at home. She said the foreman demanded more than they could do, that people were dropping from hunger, and he yelled, threatened punishment. Zoya told him to his face, "You are killing us." The foreman turned pale, turned, and left. In the evening, Zoya told her mother. Anna Mihailovna got scared, told her, "Don't talk like that, it's dangerous, they could report you." Zoya waved her hand dismissively. "Everyone thinks so," she said. "I'm just saying it out loud." Anna Mihailovna searched for her for 2 months, went to institutions, wrote applications, filled out forms, asked. Nobody knew anything. Nobody had seen anything. One of the thousands missing. The city swallowed people without a trace. The blockade left no records. People disappeared, and no one could say where. They died, were arrested, evacuated, simply vanished. By spring, Anna Mihailovna understood that her daughter was dead. The logic was simple and terrifying. If Zoya were alive, she would have found a way to let her know, written a note, passed it through someone. She would have returned. Therefore she cannot, which means she is dead. She died of hunger. Somewhere on the way to the factory or back, fell and didn't get up. Froze, or simply couldn't get up. She was picked up by the funeral teams. The ones who went through the city with sleds, collecting bodies, took her to Piskaryovka, threw her into a common grave without a name, without registration, without memory, like thousands of others, like hundreds of thousands of others. Anna Mihailovna held a small memorial. Bread, water, 2 candles. She had nothing else. She read a prayer, one she remembered from her grandmother. She cried quietly into her pillow, so the neighbors wouldn't hear. She buried her daughter in her heart. She decided that if she herself survived, she would remember. She would remember every day until her death. Her daughter's face, her voice, her laugh, everything that was. She survived. She went through the blockade, endured the hunger, the cold, the bombings, the deaths around her. She was evacuated in the summer of 43. She returned to Leningrad. In the autumn of 45, the city was destroyed. Houses burned, streets empty. But the city was alive, rebuilding. People were returning. She got a job as a cloakroom attendant at the Mali Drama Theater on Fontanka. The work was simple. Receive coats, give tags, keep order. She was paid little, but it was stable. She lived in a communal apartment in Petrogradskaya, a small room, 9 square meters, with 2 neighbors. But she was alone, without her daughter, without her husband. He had died in 37, without a past, only with memory. And now the coat. The performance lasted 2.5 hours. Anna Mihailovna didn't remember how they passed. She sat on her chair in the cloakroom, looked at number 123, tried to think. Her thoughts were tangled, returning to the same thing. Where did that woman get Zoya's coat? The possibilities lined up, one after another. She bought it at the market. During the war, anything was sold. The living sold the things of the dead. Entire rows in Senia Square. Coats, dresses, shoes, everything taken from corpses. What was taken from empty apartments. Nobody asked where from. Everyone understood. She inherited it, maybe from a relative who died, found it in a destroyed house. During the blockade, looting was commonplace. They entered empty apartments, took what they could. Her husband brought it to her. One who worked in the funeral team or the militia, took the things off a corpse, brought them home. Or Zoya sold the coat herself, exchanged it for bread, for grits, for some food. In the blockade, everyone did that. They exchanged clothes, furniture, books, jewelry for food. Life was worth more than things. Anna Mihailovna herself had exchanged silver spoons for half a loaf of bread, sold her wedding ring for 1 sack of potatoes. But if Zoya had sold the coat, it meant she was alive. At least at that moment, in the winter of 42 or later, in the spring of 43. Maybe even the summer. And if she was alive then, maybe she was alive now. The thought was crazy, wild, impossible. Anna Mihailovna had buried her daughter 5 years ago. She had resigned herself, gotten used to it, learned to live on, learned not to cry every day, learned to remember without pain, almost without pain. But now this thought had lodged itself in her brain and gave her no peace. Alive. Maybe she is alive somewhere, somehow, for some reason not making contact. But she is alive. During the intermission, a few spectators came to the cloakroom. Someone had forgotten a handkerchief. Another wanted to get cigarettes from their coat pocket. Anna Mihailovna served them automatically, not hearing the questions, barely distinguishing the faces, nodding, handing over items, thanking them for tips. All her attention was focused on number 123. The coat hung motionless. The mother-of-pearl buttons shone faintly in the lamplight. She approached, touched the collar again, ran her fingers over the embroidery. The letters were raised, palpable. A.K. Her work. No mistake. The show ended at 10:30. The spectators headed to the cloakroom. Noise, voices, laughter. Everyone was discussing the show. Anna Mihailovna handed out the coats, counted the tags, received small tips of 1 ruble, 2. Her hands worked on their own. Habit. Years of work. But her eyes watched the door. She was waiting for that woman to appear. What she would say. What she would ask. How to find out about the coat. The woman appeared after 10 minutes, walking unhurriedly, without agitation, alone, without companions. She held out number 123. Anna Mihailovna took the coat from the rack. Her hands were shaking. She passed it over the counter. The woman took it, put it on her shoulders, fastened the top button. Her movements were smooth, practiced. She adjusted the collar. Anna Mihailovna stared at her. The woman felt her gaze, looked up. A tired face, calm, a little sad. An ordinary face. Brown eyes, not gray, a straight nose, thin lips. Not Zoya? Not at all Zoya? She asked quietly. Is something wrong? Anna Mihailovna was silent. She had a lump in her throat. The words wouldn't come out. She wanted to ask where she got the coat, where she got it from, whom she bought it from. But her tongue wouldn't obey. The woman waited for about 10 seconds, shrugged, turned, and started towards the exit. Her heels clicked on the floor. She was moving away. Anna Mihailovna threw off her apron, came out from behind the counter, caught up with the woman at the door, touched her sleeve. She asked her to wait. Her voice was hoarse, breathless. The woman stopped, turned around. Her eyebrows rose in surprise. Anna Mihailovna told her they needed to talk. They must. It's important. But the coat? The woman frowned, asked, "Why? What about the coat?" Anna Mihailovna begged her, implored her. "Tell me, where did you get it? Did you buy it? When, please?" The woman looked her in the eyes for a long time, studied her face. Then her expression softened. Something changed in it. The tension disappeared. Only fatigue and a quiet sadness remained. She agreed, said, "All right, let's talk." They left the theater. The night was cold, windy. Anna Mihailovna hadn't taken her coat. She had forgotten. The woman noticed, suggested she go back. Anna Mihailovna shook her head. "No need. It's not cold." Although it was cold. The biting wind from the Neva penetrated to the bone. They walked along the Fontanka embankment to the nearest bench. They sat down. The evening was cold, windy. The river blackened below. The water was heavy, oily, flowing slowly towards the Neva. The lanterns were reflected in the water like yellow spots. Rare passers-by hurried past them, wrapped in coats. Somewhere in the distance a tram rumbled. The woman was silent, took a handkerchief from her bag, wiped her face. Anna Mihailovna waited, didn't rush her, watched the river, listened to its sound. Finally the woman spoke. Her voice was low, calm, emotionless. She said she bought this coat in 43, in the spring, April or May, she couldn't remember exactly, in Zoia Square, from a girl. Young, about 20 years old, maybe a little older, thin, pale, wearing a headscarf, standing with a bundle of things at the entrance, selling a coat, a dress, something else. The woman was working at the hospital as an orderly then. She needed a coat. Her old one had completely fallen apart. There was nothing left to patch. She saw this one. She liked it. Good quality, whole, without holes or patches. She asked how much. The girl told her the price. It wasn't expensive. Much cheaper than in a store. If there had been anything in the stores anyway. She paid, took the coat, and left. That's all. She never met that girl again. Anna Mihailovna listened without breathing, absorbing every word. The spring of 43, Zoia Square. A girl of about 20. Zoia was 22 and 42, 23 and 43. "It fits," she asked quietly. "Did the girl say anything? Where did she get the coat? Why was she selling it?" The woman shook her head. No, she didn't say anything. She didn't ask. Everyone was selling things then. Nobody asked why. Everyone understood. Famine. Food was needed. Things were exchanged for bread, for grits, for whatever they could get. Anna Mihailovna asked what she looked like. "Maybe you remembered something specific. Her face? Her voice?" The woman thought, squinted, remembering. "Brunette," she said. "Gray eyes, I think, or blue. I don't remember exactly. Tall, taller than me. An ordinary face, exhausted, like everyone's back then. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin with a grayish tint, thin hands." She spoke quietly. Her voice was hoarse, tired. She didn't remember anything else. Almost 4 years had passed. Much had been forgotten. Brunette, gray eyes, tall. Zoia was like that, exactly like that. Anna Mihailovna asked in a trembling voice. "And did she say where she was from, where she lived? Maybe she mentioned something?" The woman frowned, remembering. "Wait," she said. "She did say something, when I asked her why the coat was so good, where she got it. Because in the blockade everything was bad, worn out, and this one was quality." The girl answered. Said she was from the country. That her mother had given it to her a long time ago, before the war. But now she needed money or food. I don't remember exactly, something like that. That in the country you can't buy anything? You have nothing to buy with. That's why she came to the city to sell. "From the country," Anna Mihailovna repeated. Her heart was pounding, beating so hard she thought the woman could hear it. Did she name the village? Which one? Where? The woman shook her head. "I don't remember, or she didn't name it. Maybe she named it, but I forgot. But I think she mentioned it was far, that she came from far away, that she had traveled a long time, and that there is nothing in the villages. Everything is looted, That's why you have to go to the city. Far away, Anna Mihailovna whispered. She came from the village to the city. She fell silent. Her thoughts raced, collided, tangled, settled into a picture. Zoia had sold the coat in the spring of 43, so she was alive. She said she was from the country, so she had gone there, was living there. Why? What for? What had happened? Anna Mihailovna remembered. Zoia worked at the factory. Before she disappeared, she complained, told a friend at her shift that the quota was unbearable, that people were collapsing right at their lathes, that the bosses didn't help, just demanded more. She said this out loud, in the workshop, in front of other workers. She wasn't afraid, or simply didn't think about the consequences. Anna Mihailovna had begged her then to be quiet, not to say too much. Zoia waved it off, said everyone thought so, that she was just speaking the truth out loud, that you shouldn't be silent, that if everyone kept silent, nothing would change. But she should have been silent. In those years, silence saved lives. Words killed. If someone reported her, if Zoia found out they had written a denunciation against her, that they were coming to arrest her, then she could have fled, not waited for the arrest, left for the country, somewhere far from the city, to hide, to wait, to change her name, her documents, to live under a false name, to wait until everything calmed down, until the war ended, until she could return. That explained everything. The disappearance, the coat, the silence, the lack of news. Zoia was alive. 5 years ago she was alive, selling things at the market, so she needed money, so she was living, breathing, walking the earth. But now? The woman asked quietly. Why are you asking? What does this coat mean to you? Anna Mihailovna turned to her. The woman was looking at her calmly, without curiosity. In her eyes was the same quiet sadness as before. Fatigue, understanding. She was waiting for an answer, not rushing her. Anna Mihailovna spoke slowly, forcing the words out. This is my daughter's coat. I bought it myself in 37 from Gum. I embroidered the initials on the collar myself, my initials, so I would know it was mine. Then I gave it to my daughter. She was taller than me, slimmer. The coat fit her perfectly. She disappeared in 42, in winter, during the blockade. I thought she was dead. For 5 years I believed it. I buried her in my heart. I resigned myself. And now I see this coat and I understand. Maybe she is alive. Maybe she is somewhere. Her voice broke. Anna Mihailovna fell silent, wiped her eyes with her sleeve. The tears flowed on their own. She couldn't stop them. The woman was silent, looked at the river, then nodded slowly and said, I understand. They sat in silence. The wind ruffled their hair, blew the cold river air in their faces. The lanterns swayed on their posts. Somewhere in the distance, it struck 11. The bell tolls spread over the city. 11 tolls, slow, rhythmic. I had a daughter too, the woman said suddenly, quietly, without looking at Anna Mihailovna, staring at the river. She died in the blockade, of starvation. She was 8 years old. Her name was Ninochka. She died in February 42. She lay in bed and wouldn't get up. She got weaker and weaker. I brought her my bread. I gave her my whole ration, but it didn't help. She was fading, simply fading. On the last day, she didn't even open her eyes. I sat next to her, held her hand, told her everything would be all right, that spring would come soon, that we would survive. She didn't answer, just breathed softly. Then she stopped breathing. That's all. Anna Mihailovna turned to her. The woman was looking at the river. Her face was calm, but her lips were trembling, her eyes shining. I understand what you are feeling, the woman continued. I understand what it means to lose a child and what hope means, even a tiny one, that they are alive. If your daughter is truly alive, find her. You must find her. Don't give up. Search for her until you find her. Because if there is the slightest chance, you must not miss it. You must not resign yourself. You must not give up hope. She stood up, adjusted her coat, looked at Anna Mihailovna one last time. Her eyes were moist. She wished her quietly. Good luck. I wish it from my heart. She turned and left. Her heels clicked on the embankment, slow, rhythmic, moving away. The dark blue coat dissolved into the dusk, disappeared around the corner. Anna Mihailovna remained sitting on the bench, alone. Her head was ringing, her hands were shaking. Something in her chest was tightening and releasing. Either hope or fear. She didn't know what she felt. Joy, terror, pain. All at once. Zoia is alive, somewhere in the country, under a false name. Hiding, unable to return, or doesn't want to, or is afraid. She must find her. Absolutely find her. But how? The next morning, Anna Mihailovna woke up early. She hadn't slept all night, just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Towards morning, she made a decision. She would leave. She would search for her. She couldn't sit idly by, couldn't just wait. She had to act. She went to the Moscow station, walked, saving on the tram, stood in line at the ticket office. Tens of people stood in front of her. Workers, peasants, soldiers. Everyone was going somewhere on business. Anna Mihailovna waited patiently, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Finally, she reached the window, asked for a ticket to Novgorod. The cashier, an elderly woman with glasses, looked at the schedule. She said, "The train is the day after tomorrow, in the morning." Anna Mihailovna bought the ticket, spent almost all the money she had. She was left with enough for bread and for one night's lodging there, if needed. She returned home. She packed a small bag, one change of underwear, a headscarf, bread, a bottle of water, a little money, all she could take. She wrote a note to the theater manager. Short, without details. She fell ill, would be back in 1 week. Apologies. She left it on the table in the cloakroom. The manager wouldn't be happy, but that's how it was. He would understand. Or he wouldn't understand. It didn't matter. 2 days dragged on endlessly. Anna Mihailovna could neither eat nor sleep. She lay on the bed, stared at the ceiling, replayed the conversation with the woman in her mind. A village ending in Ina or Ova, the Novgorod or Pskov region. The girl was selling things in the spring of 43, meaning she had already been living there for several months. Since winter, perhaps, or the autumn of 42. Maybe she is still there. If she is alive. If she hasn't left. If she hasn't died. Anna Mihailovna pushed these thoughts away. She couldn't afford to doubt. Zoia is alive. She must be alive. Otherwise, what's the point of all this? Why did the code appear? Why did hope return? No, Zoia is alive. She just has to find her. The train left early in the morning. Anna Mihailovna arrived at the station 1 hour early, waited on the platform. It was cold. A November morning. The wind was biting, but she stood there. Didn't go into the waiting room, afraid she'd be late. The train arrived on time. The car was packed. Workers, peasants, demobilized soldiers, women with bundles and children. It smelled of makhorka, sweat, wet clothes, something sour. Anna Mihailovna squeezed inside, found a seat by the window, sat down, clutched her bag to her chest, watched the fields and forests rushing past the window. They traveled for a long time. The train stopped at every station, waiting for half an hour, 1 hour. People got off, got on, smoked on the platforms, bought boiled potatoes, cucumbers, milk in bottles, cabbage pies from vendors. Anna Mihailovna did not get off. She sat, looked out the window, thought about what she would say to Zoia when she found her, how she would explain that she had searched for her. Zoia has been hiding for 5 years, living under a false name. Maybe she is afraid to return, afraid they will arrest her, afraid her mother is already dead, or that her mother won't understand, will condemn her, will reject her. Anna Mihailovna decided she will tell her that she loves her, that she waited for her, that she has forgiven everything that happened, that the main thing is that Zoia is alive. The rest doesn't matter. The name doesn't matter. The documents don't matter. What matters is life, her daughter, the bond between them. They arrived in Novgorod in the evening. It was already getting dark. The city was destroyed. Piles of bricks, burned walls, collapsed roofs, empty windows. The Germans had destroyed it almost completely. It was being rebuilt slowly. Anna Mihailovna went out into the square in front of the station, looked around. Where to go, where to start. She went to the executive committee, asked a passerby where it was. He showed her. She walked 2 streets, found the building, went inside. Inside it smelled of dust, paper, tobacco. A long corridor, doors on both sides. A woman was sitting at a table there, typing something on a typewriter, hitting the keys quickly, without looking. Anna Mihailovna waited until she finished. Then she approached, asked where she could find the list of villages in the region. The woman looked at her tiredly, her face gray, exhausted, nodded towards a door. "The archive is there," she said. "Ask the manager. That door at the end." The archive was in the next building. Anna Mihailovna climbed the stairs, knocked on the door, waited. No one answered. She knocked again, harder. Finally, the door opened. An elderly woman with glasses stood in the doorway, thin, with gray hair pulled into a bun. A stern face, sharp eyes, she asked, "What do you want?" Anna Mihailovna explained that she was looking for a village. She doesn't know the exact name, but it ends in Ina or Ova, 2 syllables, the Novgorod or Pskov region. The director frowned, took off her glasses, wiped them with a handkerchief, and put them back on. She said, "We have hundreds of such villages in the region, maybe more. How should we search? By what criteria?" Anna Mihailovna was confused. She didn't know what to answer. She pleaded, "Give me the list. I will look. Maybe I'll remember something. Maybe I'll come across a familiar name." The director sighed, went to the cabinets, took out a thick file with laces, and handed it to Anna Mihailovna. "Here," she said. "Look. But be careful. The paper is old." Anna Mihailovna sat down at the table, untied the laces, opened the file. The list was long. Pages and pages of names, handwritten in ink, faded, pale. The handwriting was different. Someone had written neatly, someone else sloppily. Berzovo, Klimova, Yasina, Dubova, Sosnova, Patina, Marina, Ivashkova, Eltsova, Kozlova, Sergeyeva. Hundreds of names, all similar, all the same. How to tell them apart? How to know which one was the real one? She read slowly, line by line, trying to feel which one was the one she was looking for, but nothing resonated. The names merged, got tangled, blurred before her eyes. The letters danced, her head was spinning. An hour later, the director approached and told her it was time to close. It was already 8 o'clock. She had to go home. Anna Mihailovna raised her head and pleaded, "Can I stay a little longer? Please." The director shook her head. "No, come tomorrow," she said. "I'll be here from 8 o'clock in the morning. You will continue." Anna Mihailovna closed the file, stood up, left the archive, and went to look for a place to sleep. She found a visitor's dormitory and paid 3 rubles. She got a bed in a room where 4 women were already sleeping. She lay down, closed her eyes, but did not sleep. The names of the villages were spinning in her head: Berzovo, Klimova, Yasina. In the morning, she returned to the archive. The director was already at her desk. Anna Mihailovna sat down at the table again, opened the file again, and read on. Page after page, hour after hour. Her eyes were getting tired, her back ached, but she read. Towards lunch, she understood that this wouldn't work. She needed another method. It was impossible to guess the name from a list. She needed another clue. She asked the director if there were lists of refugees, of those who had come to the region during the war. Maybe there would be something there, the director thought, tapping her fingers on the table. "There are," she said, "but they are not complete. Many did not register, they were afraid, or simply didn't know they had to." The war was chaos. Anna Mihailovna pleaded, "Show me, please. Maybe I'll find something there." The director stood up, went to another cabinet, took out another, thinner file, and handed it to her. "Here you go," she said. "Take a look." The list was shorter, a few dozen names. First names, last names, years of birth, the village they came from. Anna Mihailovna read carefully, looking for the name Zoia, Zoia Kosatkina, but it wasn't there. Of course, it wasn't. Zoia was hiding under another name. She wouldn't have registered with her real name. Then, Anna Mihailovna started searching by year of birth. Zoia was 22 years old in the year 42, born in The year, 20. She found a few women of the same age and wrote down their names and villages. Maria Ivanova, Klimova, Anna Petrova, Dubova, Vera Nikolaeva, Sosnova, Ekaterina Sidorova, Berezova, Olga Smirnova, Iasina. In total, 5 people. It was at least a clue. Anna Mihailovna thanked the director, returned to the dormitory, and spent the night there. In the morning, she went to the bus station. A small platform with an awning, a few buses, the schedule on a board. She bought a ticket to the first village on the list, Klimova. The bus traveled for 2 hours on a broken road. They jolted, chattered their teeth, held onto the seats. Klimova turned out to be a small village. About 10 houses, a half-ruined church without a dome, a well in the middle of the street. Anna Mihailovna got off the bus and looked around. Silence. Desolation. A dog was barking somewhere in the distance. An old woman with a headscarf and a stick immediately approached her. She asked her who she was looking for. Anna Mihailovna said the name from the list, Maria Ivanova. The old woman nodded. "I know her," she said. "She lives in that house, the last one, with the green shutters." Anna Mihailovna went to the house and knocked. The door was opened by a short, dark-haired woman with a full face. It wasn't Zoia. Not Zoia at all. The face was unfamiliar. The voice was unfamiliar. Anna Mihailovna apologized, said she had the wrong address, returned to the station, got on the return bus, and left for the next village on the list. A week passed like this. Anna Mihailovna traveled through villages, found the women from the list, looked at them, and left. None of them was Zoia. None of them matched. They were all strangers. All the wrong ones. Towards the end of the week, her money had almost run out. She had just enough left for a return ticket to Leningrad. Nothing more. Anna Mihailovna sat in the dormitory, looked out the window, and tried to decide what to do next. Maybe she had come in vain? Maybe the woman from the theater had been wrong? Maybe the girl who had sold her the coat wasn't Zoia? Or maybe Zoia had already left the village or had died during these years. Anna Mihailovna closed her eyes. She put her head in her hands. She was tired. She was very tired. She wanted to cry, but she had no tears. Everything inside had dried up. Hopelessness. Despair. Then she decided to try one last time. Not by lists, but simply by asking people. The vendors in the market. The bus drivers. The women in the queues. Maybe someone had heard something. Maybe someone knew. The last chance. The next morning, Anna Mihailovna went to the market. She approached the vendors and asked them, "Do you happen to know of a girl about 25-30 years old, tall, dark-haired? She came from Leningrad in the year 42. Maybe she lives somewhere in a village under a different name." The vendors shook their heads. "We don't know," they said. There were many like her. They all came from Leningrad. They all hid, some from the Germans, others from our own. There were all kinds. An old woman selling potatoes looked at Anna Mihailovna for a long time and asked, "But why do you need her?" Anna Mihailovna replied, "I'm looking for my daughter. I thought she was dead, but now I've found out she might be alive." The old woman nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. "Keep looking. Maybe you'll find her. I heard there was such a girl from the city in Sosnovo. She married a local, lived there. Maybe she's yours, maybe not, I don't know. But try." Sosnovo. Anna Mihailovna remembered it was one of the villages on the list. She had noted the name Vera Nikolaeva, but she hadn't managed to get there. Her money had run out. She asked the old woman how to get there. The old woman explained, "The bus runs 2 times a day, morning and evening. The village is large, about 40 kilometers from here to the east." Anna Mihailovna counted her money. She had just enough for a ticket there and one back to Leningrad. But she decided to risk it, the last chance. She bought a ticket for the evening bus and left for Sosnovo. They traveled for a long time. It was already dark when they arrived. The village was indeed large. Several dozen houses, a school, the village council, a club, a church. Anna Mihailovna got off the bus, approached the first man she met, and asked him about the girl from Leningrad who had married a local. The man scratched his head and took a drag from his hand-rolled cigarette. "There were several," he said. But there is one for sure. She lives at the edge of the village beyond the bridge. The husband's name is Popov. What her name is, I don't remember. She's not from around here. She's quiet. Rarely comes out in the village. She's kind of withdrawn. Anna Mihailovna thanked him. Her heart was pounding. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was Zoya. She started in the direction of the bridge, found it, and crossed it. Beyond the bridge there were a few houses. She asked a woman passing by where the Popov family's house was. The woman showed her. There it is, that one, with the birch tree in the yard. Anna Mihailovna approached. The house beyond the bridge was small, wooden, with a dilapidated fence. A bare birch tree grew in the yard, without leaves. Its branches swayed in the wind. A dim, yellowish light burned in the windows. Anna Mihailovna approached the gate and stopped. Her hands were shaking. She was breathing with difficulty. She stood for a bit, gathering her strength, then knocked. Heavy, manly footsteps were heard from inside. The door was opened by a young man, about 30 years old, broad-shouldered in a work shirt. His face was tired, unshaven. He looked at Anna Mihailovna questioningly. "What do you want?" he asked. His voice was hoarse. Anna Mihailovna tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't obey. She swallowed and forced herself. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm looking for a girl who came from Leningrad during the war. They say she lives here. She got married." The man frowned. "And why are you looking for her?" Anna Mihailovna answered quietly. "I am her mother. I'm looking for my daughter." The man looked at her for a long time, searchingly, squinted, then nodded slowly. "Wait here," he said. He closed the door. Anna Mihailovna stood at the gate and listened. Footsteps were heard from the house, low, indistinct voices. A man's voice, then a woman's. They were asking something, answering, then silence, long. Anna Mihailovna waited. Her heart was beating so hard, it felt like it would jump out of her chest. Then, footsteps again. The door opened. On the threshold stood a tall, thin woman in a dark dress and with a headscarf on her head. Pale, tired face, large, gray, unfamiliar eyes. It wasn't Zoya. Anna Mihailovna felt everything inside her collapse. Her heart clenched. Her breath caught in her throat. The world swayed. Her legs gave way. She held onto the gate so as not to fall. She looked at the woman and couldn't utter a word. The woman looked at her questioningly, waiting. Then she asked quietly, "Who are you looking for?" Her voice was tired, wary. Anna Mihailovna forced herself to speak. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was trembling. "I'm looking for a girl who came from Leningrad during the war. They say she lives here. She married a local." The woman frowned. "Are you looking for Vera?" Anna Mihailovna nodded. She didn't know who Vera was, but she clung to any clue, any name. "Yes," she said. "Vera." The woman shook her head slowly. "She's not here," she said. "She left a month ago, maybe even longer. They decided to return to the city, to Leningrad, together with her husband." Anna Mihailovna stood motionless. The words reached her slowly, as if through cotton wool. "She left for Leningrad a month ago. She returned." "But why are you looking for her?" the woman asked. Anna Mihailovna didn't answer. She just stood there, staring blankly. Then she turned and left. She heard the woman calling after her, asking her something, but she didn't stop. She walked quickly, almost running, across the bridge, through the village, towards the bus station. She left for Leningrad. Anna Mihailovna reached the station, sat down on the bench, and covered her face with her hands. She was breathing heavily. Her head was buzzing, everything was mixed up. Zoya had been here. She had lived here for 5 years. She had gotten married, and now she had returned to Leningrad. A huge city, 3 million people. How to find one person? How to find the one who is hiding, who lives under a false name? Impossible. The bus came an hour later. Anna Mihailovna sat by the window. She watched the fields and forests flying past the window, dark, deserted. She was thinking. Zoya had returned to Leningrad. It meant she had decided the danger had passed. The war had ended long ago. 2 years had already passed. Maybe she thinks everything is forgotten, that she can return. But under what name? Vera, that woman had said. It means Zoya is still hiding. She lives under a false name, with false documents, somewhere in the city. Maybe on the other side, maybe next door. But how to find her? How? Anna Mihailovna arrived in Novgorod late in the evening. She spent the night in the dormitory for the last time. In the morning, she boarded the train to Leningrad. She spent her last money on the ticket. She traveled for a long time. She looked out the window and tried to make a plan. Maybe ask at the Kirov factory. Maybe someone had seen Zoya. Maybe they knew where she was. But 5 years had passed. People had left, died, forgotten. The factory was huge, thousands of workers. How to search? And even if someone remembered Zoya, she wasn't living under her own name, she wouldn't respond. Maybe put an ad in the newspaper. Looking for daughter Zoya Kasatkina. Disappeared in the year 42. But if Zoya is hiding, she won't respond. She'll get scared, she'll think it's a trap, that it's not her mother looking for her, but the authorities. Maybe just wait. Walk the streets, look at the faces of passers-by, hope for a chance meeting. But Leningrad is huge, millions of people. The chances were almost non-existent, almost zero. Anna Mihailovna closed her eyes and leaned her head against the window. She was tired. She was very tired. The week of searching, hopes, and disappointments had drained all her strength, physical and emotional, everything. Zoya had been so close in that village, alive, married, living a normal life, and now she was lost again. In a huge city, among millions, unreachable. The train arrived in Leningrad late in the evening. It was dark and cold. Anna Mihailovna got off on the platform and headed for the exit. People were crowding, hurrying, pushing. Everyone was rushing somewhere. Home, to their families, to their lives. Anna Mihailovna walked slowly, looking at the ground. She didn't want to go home. She didn't want to return to the empty room, to the loneliness, to the thought that her daughter was somewhere nearby but unreachable. She went out into the square in front of the station, stopped, and looked around. The streetlights burned dimly, the trams clanged. Scarce passers-by hurried past her. Where to go? Home. She headed for the metro. She went down the stairs, bought a ticket, got into the car. She sat down by the window and looked at her reflection in the dark glass. A tired, old, gray face. When had she managed to age so much? In this week? In these 5 years? In her whole life? The metro moved, swaying. People got in and out at every station. Anna Mihailovna didn't look at them. She sat with her eyes fixed on the window. She was thinking about Zoya, about the fact that, somewhere in this city, her daughter was living, breathing, walking the same streets. Maybe even at that moment, she was riding the metro. In another car, on another line. So close and so far. Anna Mihailovna reached her station. She got off on the platform, headed for the exit. She rode slowly up the escalator, holding on to the handrail. Her legs wouldn't obey. She was tired. She wanted to go home. She wanted to lie down, close her eyes, forget. Forget this week, this hope, this disappointment. Up, at the exit, people were crowding. It was evening. The rush hour hadn't passed yet. Someone was waiting for someone. Someone was in a hurry. Someone was just standing, smoking, and looking around. Anna Mihailovna passed them and went out into the street. The night was cold and damp. The November wind chilled you to the bone. The streetlights burned dimly, few people. The city was preparing for sleep. Anna Mihailovna started for home. She walked slowly, with difficulty. Every step was an effort. Not because of fatigue, but because of the emptiness inside. She had found her daughter's trail, almost touched her, found out she was alive, and lost her again. In a huge city, among millions. A week passed. Anna Mihailovna returned to work, at the theater. The boss greeted her coldly. He told her you can't just leave like that, without notice, that he had barely found a replacement for her. One more time and he'd fire her. Anna Mihailovna nodded, apologized, and sat down at the cloakroom counter. She received coats, gave out numbers. She worked as always, mechanically, but something inside her had died. Every evening, returning home, Anna Mihailovna looked at the faces of the passers-by. She searched among them for Zoia, tall, dark-haired, with gray eyes. She looked at every woman of a suitable age, scanned their faces, looked for familiar features, but found none. All the faces were strange. A month passed, then a second. Winter came, it snowed, the city turned white. Anna Mihailovna continued to work, to go home, to look at faces. Gradually, hope faded. She understood that in such a big city, it is impossible to find someone who doesn't want to be found. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Useless. The winter of the year 47 passed into spring. The snow melted, the city came alive. People started going out on the streets more often. Anna Mihailovna went out too. She walked through the center, through the parks, along the embankments. She looked, searched, hoped, but in vain. One day in April, Anna Mihailovna was returning from work. A usual evening. The show had ended. She had closed the cloakroom, gone to the metro, and was heading home. The car was packed. Evening rush hour. People stood crowded, pressed against each other. It smelled of sweat, tobacco, perfume. Anna Mihailovna stood by the door, holding on to the bar. She looked out the window at the tunnel lights flickering in the dark. She was thinking her own thoughts, about work, about home, about her daughter, who was somewhere nearby but unreachable. She had already gotten used to this thought. She had resigned herself. The pain had become dull, constant, background noise. The train approached the station, the doors opened, and people poured out, pushing, hurrying. Anna Mihailovna got out with everyone and headed for the escalator. The crowd carried her, not letting her stop. She rode up slowly, holding on to the handrail. In front, tens of people were moving, behind, tens more. Everyone was silent. Only the escalator hummed monotonously, quietly, evenly. At the top, Anna Mihailovna stepped onto the platform and headed for the exit. People passed by her, men in coats, women with bags, children holding their parents' hands. Everyone was in a hurry. Everyone was rushing somewhere, home, to their loved ones. Anna Mihailovna walked slowly, looking at the ground. She was tired. She wanted to go home. She wanted to lie down, close her eyes, forget. And suddenly she stopped. In front, about 10 steps away, a woman was walking with her back to her. Tall, thin, in a dark coat. Her hair was pulled back in a bun. Next to her, a broad-shouldered man in a work jacket. He was holding the woman's arm, guiding her carefully, attentively, as if afraid she would fall. Anna Mihailovna looked at the woman and couldn't breathe. The gait, the posture, the turn of the head, the slope of the shoulders. Everything was familiar. Everything was hers, Zoya's. The woman stopped at the exit. The man said something to her. She nodded. They stood and talked quietly, unhurriedly. The man adjusted the collar of her coat. Anna Mihailovna approached, slowly, carefully. She was afraid it was an illusion, that it wasn't Zoia, that it was another unfamiliar face, that it was a mirage, that she was going mad from grief and fatigue. The woman turned around. Pale, tired face, sharp cheekbones, pursed lips, the familiar chin, the same nose. But most importantly, the eyes. Gray, large, intelligent. Zoya's same eyes. It was Zoia. Anna Mihailovna stood motionless. She looked at her daughter. She couldn't move, couldn't utter a word. She just looked at her. She was afraid to blink, afraid that if she blinked, Zoia would disappear. Zoia looked at her too, at first distractedly, without recognizing her. Her gaze slid past, then stopped, returned, and looked again, more attentively. Her face changed. Her eyes widened, her lips parted. She turned even paler. The hand holding her bag trembled. They stood facing each other in the middle of the metro station. People passed by them, pushed, hurried, made noise, talked, laughed. No one paid attention to the two women frozen in the middle of the crowd. Zoia took a step forward, slowly, uncertainly, as if in a dream. Anna Mihailovna also took a step. Her feet moved on their own. Another step. Another. They met. They looked into each other's eyes. Long, in silence. The world around them had disappeared. Only the two of them remained, mother and daughter, who hadn't seen each other for 5 years. Then Zoia reached out her hand, slowly, trembling. She touched her mother's face, her cheeks, her lips, her forehead, like a blind person, as if not believing her eyes, checking if she was real, if she was alive. Her fingers were cold and trembling. Anna Mihailovna took her daughter's hand in hers and squeezed it tightly. She felt warmth, a living, real warmth. The pulse at her wrist, rapid, frequent, alive. Zoia moved closer. She hugged her mother. She buried her face in her shoulder. She held her tightly, desperately. Anna Mihailovna hugged her daughter, pressed her to her chest. She felt Zoia trembling, crying silently. Her tears fell on her shoulder, on her coat. Anna Mihailovna cried too. Silently, tears streamed down her face, fell on Zoya's coat, on the floor. The man stood nearby, watching them. His face was bewildered. He didn't understand what was happening, but he didn't intervene. He waited. They stood like that for a long time, embracing, in the middle of the station. People passed by them. Some turned their heads, others smiled, others hurried on. But they didn't care. Only they mattered, mother and daughter, who had found each other after 5 years of separation, after 5 years of pain, fear, and hope. Finally, Zoia pulled back a little. She wiped her tears with her sleeve and looked at her mother. Her eyes were red, wet, but something warm, alive, joyful shone in them. Anna Mihailovna stroked her daughter's hair, her cheeks. She looked at her face, memorizing every feature, every small wrinkle, every mole. She was afraid it was a dream, that Zoia would disappear, would vanish like smoke. Zoia took her mother's hand, squeezed it tightly, didn't let go. Then she turned to the man. He was standing aside, watching them, puzzled. Zoia motioned for him to come closer. He approached. Zoia looked at her mother. Her voice was low, trembling, hoarse from crying. "This is my husband," she said. "Ivan." Ivan held out his hand. Anna Mihailovna shook it. A strong, hard-working, calloused hand. He nodded and smiled slightly, awkwardly. "Hello," he said. "I've heard a lot about you." Anna Mihailovna couldn't speak. She had a lump in her throat. She just nodded, squeezing Zoya's hand. She didn't let go. She was afraid to let go. "Let's go," Ivan said. "It's cold and crowded here. Come to our place. We don't live far. We'll talk there." They left the metro and started down the street. Ivan walked ahead. Zoia and her mother walked beside each other, holding hands. They were silent. Words were not necessary. They just walked together, side by side. They walked for about 15 minutes. They reached an old building, on the outskirts. The staircase was shabby. The steps were steep. They went up to the 3rd floor. Ivan opened the door and invited them in. The apartment was small, 1 room and a kitchen, but clean and cozy. It smelled of soup and fresh bread. There were curtains on the window, photographs hanging on the wall. Ivan took off his coat and hung it on the rack. Zoia helped her mother take off her coat, led her into the room, sat her down on the sofa, and sat down next to her, holding her hand. They were silent, just looking at each other. Ivan brought tea, put it on the table, then quietly left the room and closed the door. He left the two of them alone. Zoia spoke first. Her voice was low, broken, trembling. She told her what had happened. About the escape, about the village, about the marriage, about why she had returned to Leningrad. She said the war was over. She thought the danger had passed. She decided to return, but she was scared, which is why she still lives under the name Vera. Vera Nikolaevna Zaitseva. The documents were fake. Ivan had helped her get them. Her husband knew everything. He didn't judge her. He helped her. He loved her. Anna Mihailovna listened without interrupting. She stroked her daughter's hand. Then she asked quietly, "Are you happy?" Zoia looked at her mother for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "I'm happy. I have a husband, a good man. We'll have a child soon." I'm in my 3rd month. I'm alive. That's the most important thing. I'm alive, Mom. Anna Mihailovna nodded. Tears filled her eyes again. That's the most important thing, she repeated. You're alive. You're here. You're next to me. They sat in silence. Zoya rested her head on her mother's shoulder. Anna Mihailovna stroked her hair. Like in childhood, like many years ago. They sat like that for a long time without saying a word. Ivan returned. He brought soup, bread, and butter to the table. They ate together. A little. In silence. But the food was tasty. Homemade. Real. After dinner, Anna Mihailovna prepared to leave. It was late. Zoya didn't want to let her go. Stay, she pleaded. Stay overnight here. We have room. Anna Mihailovna shook her head. No, she said. I have to go home. I have to go to work early tomorrow. I'm used to it. But I'll come again, she added quickly. I'll definitely come. Can I? Anytime you want, I'll be glad. Zoya nodded and smiled through her tears. Come, she said. Anytime you want. We're always here. We're not going anywhere. Anna Mihailovna hugged her daughter goodbye. Long, tight. She breathed in the smell of her hair, memorized it. Then she let her go, turned, and left the apartment. Ivan walked her to the building's exit. Thank you, Anna Mihailovna said, for taking care of her, for loving her. Ivan nodded. She's a good woman, he said. Gentle, strong. I love her very much. I protect her. Anna Mihailovna smiled. That's the most important thing, she said. Love each other. That's all that matters. She started for home. She walked slowly through the dark streets. The street lights burned dimly. The wind was cold, piercing. An April wind. But Anna Mihailovna felt warm. Something was shining inside her, spreading throughout her whole body. Joy, relief, happiness. A pure, true happiness. She had found her daughter. Finally, she had found her.